Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to dive deeper upon the philosophy of Buddhism. So Buddhism is an Asian philosophy and it is considered as a middle path between Charvak's materialistic hedonism and Jainism's extreme asceticism. So it was kind of a mid ground between both of these extreme philosophies. So Buddhism is said to be an orthodox system because orthodox or the Gnostic are the one that does not believe in the authority of the Vedas, and it is also atheistic because it rejects God. So what basically what is the sole purpose of Buddhism? Buddhism basically deals with the question of how do we remove suffering from a person's life. Suffering is the main root of all our miseries, and how do we remove it? How do we eradicate it? Buddha was basically an ethical leader than a metaphysician. During Buddha's times, the Upanishads primarily focused on ways of attaining immorality and involved in discussions about the existence of the transcendental world. So, basically, what was the crux of the Upanishads during that time was that how do we attain immorality? How do we remain more in this world? And how are we the imperishable ones? And also, there were many discussions about the existence of a transcendental world, the world which is beyond the world we see, the world which is beyond our empirical world. Buddha was against this trend in philosophy and taught a way of life which can relieve human beings from the sufferings in the empirical world. So he was not concerned about how can the cessation of suffering be done as and when we go to the transcendental world, or there is some transcendental world where there is no suffering. Buddha was of the opinion that there should be some way so that we could eradicate suffering from this very world where we are living right now. So Buddha maintained silence to the Avyaktanis, a set of philosophical questions about concepts like soul, world, and liberation that, when answered affirmatively or negatively, can implicate endless metaphysical discussions. So there can be endless interruptions of these Vyaktanis, or the set of questions which are like undescribable. We don't have any certain knowledge about the concepts of soul, world, and liberation, and it would be futile to indulge in this constant loop of metaphysical discussions. So, this silence of Buddha and some of the sermons, which mostly belong to the Buddha, have been interpreted by different followers of Buddhism in different ways. So, Buddha basically maintained silence on these epistemological and metaphysical questions. So, because of his silence, there are many interpretations of it. Like, there have been two basic schools of Buddhism based on interpreting Buddha's silence on the Avyaktanis. This led to ideological schisms and origin of different schools of Buddhism. Early schools of Buddhism were of the view that there is no truth beyond the world of existence, and it is futile to discuss about non-existent entities and truth. So the early school of Buddhism were of the opinion that we should not indulge into discussions of metaphysical realities or the metaphysical or the transcendental worlds. And there is no truth beyond the world of existence. Like the empirical world which is around us, that is the only true world, and there is nothing beyond that. There is nothing which would be termed as true which exists beyond this empirical world. However, there was a later school of Buddhism which never denied the existence of nominal truths. They were of the opinion that there are certain truths which can neither be comprehended nor be explained from the empirical point of view. So, the later school actually did not explicitly deny the existence of the other worlds or the existence of the nominal worlds. They were of the opinion that uh, may be certain truths which cannot be comprehended or which cannot be explained according to our limitations and the limitations of this empirical world and from the worldly point of view. So basically, because of the silence of Buddha on metaphysical questions, because he found them to be futile, and he just focused upon the reasons for suffering and how do we eradicate suffering from the human life. So he actually maintained a silence. However, his silence was interpreted in two ways, which led to the ideological schisms and the formation of different schools of Buddhism. The early school of Buddhism were of the opinion that only the empirical world which we see around us is the only true reality, and there is nothing which exists beyond that. And they denied the existence of any non-existent entities and truths. However, the little school of Buddhism were of the opinion that there might be some nominal truths. They did not explicitly deny it, and they said that because of there might be some truths, but those cannot be comprehended and not be explained from the empirical point of view. Whatever may be the subtle meaning of life, whatever may be the subtle meaning of Buddha's teachings and his silence to Avyaktanis, he firmly believed that there was no point in involving in metaphysical discussions. So all of these discussions and endless interpretations were actually futile according to Buddha. He proclaimed that the goal of human life is to be free from the sufferings associated with everyone's life. So he basically professed the ultimate aim of human life should be to be free from suffering which are associated with everyone's life. This idea can be seen in the Four Noble Truths which were taught by Buddha himself. So Buddha basically taught a step by step approach in his Four Noble Truths, which are: first, there is suffering, dukkha. Life is full of misery and pain. Even the so called pleasures are fraught with pain. So you cannot say that there is no suffering. Suffering is perennial, it is existing and it will exist. Because of his mention about suffering, Buddha is sometimes said to be pessimistic according to the Western philosophers. Second is, there is a cause for suffering. Dukkha samudaya. Everything has a cause, nothing comes out of nothing. Nothing comes out of nothing. This is a very prominent statement. It is an interpretation of ex nihilo nihil fit, a Latin phrase which like links to the cause, to the law of causation. Everything in this world is conditional, relative, and related. Suffering, being a fact, must have a cause. So, according to the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism, everything in this world is somehow related to each other. And since we have suffering, so there might have been a cause of suffering because of which we are facing it. So, there might have been a cause of suffering. It must depend on some conditions. Suffering, being a fact, must have a cause. It must depend on some conditions, this being that arises, or the cause being present, the effect arises. Is the causal law being behind dependent origination. So the causal law behind dependent origination is also termed as Pratityasamutpada of the Buddhism philosophy. And you could say that this is in contrast with the thing professed by Charvak, because in Charvak philosophy, they said that cause and effect don't exist. Like these are just accidental conjugation. This is just a precedent and an antecedent. There is nothing as a relation between them as such, and it is just because of seeing them multiple times, it has become a behavioral habit or a psychological necessity to link them together. However, in Buddhism, they explicitly accept that there is suffering, so there might have been a cause for it, and everything has a cause. So they give their theory of dependent origination, which could be called Pratityasamutpada. The third noble truth is the suffering can be eliminated. Dukkha nirodha. Everything arises depending on certain causes and conditions. If we remove the cause, the effect ceases to exist. So they say that since there is a suffering, there is a cause of suffering. So if we just work upon to eradicate the cause of suffering, therefore the suffering could be eliminated as such, which is referred as dukkha nirodha. So everything arises depending on certain causes and conditions. And if we just work upon the cause, if we remove the cause, the effect of suffering ceases to exist. The effect of the causes which were a precursor to suffering ceases to exist. The fourth and the last noble truth is that there is a path leading to cessation of suffering. Dukkha Nirodh Marg. By following the Eightfold Path, Ashtangika Marg, a spiritual and ethical life misery can be removed and nirvana can be attained. So it is not just that there is a cessation of suffering and then what? Okay, I have removed the cause, I have worked upon the cause, and now suffering is eliminated. Now what? What will I gain? What is the benefit of doing all this? Yes, you gain nirvana, you gain liberation, you attain nirvana. That is the theory of the Four Noble Truths professed by Buddhism. So they are in a sequential order. It is like a step by step approach. First there is suffering which is called dukh. Then they say that there is a cause of suffering because everything must have a cause, and uh, this led to the theory of dependent origination which is called as Pratityasamutpada. The next is that since there is a cause of suffering, suffering can be eliminated, which is called the dukkha nirodha. And the last is if suffering can be eliminated, then there might have been some path leading to it. So there is a path leading to the cessation of suffering, which is called the Dukkha Nirodha Marg. These are the four noble truths of the Buddhism philosophy. So there are also philosophical implications of these four noble truths. We're going to read upon them. Buddha's ethical teachings have some philosophical implications in the form of: first, the theory of dependent origination, Pratityasamutpada. Second, the theory of karma. Third, the theory of change. And fourth, the theory of non-existence of soul. So these are the four philosophical implications of the four noble truths given by Buddha. So first one is the Pratityasamutpada. Pratityasamutpada could attribute to the question of what is life and death, what is this cycle of life and death, and what is the cycle of karmas? How are we associated with it? What is the cause and effect of birth and death? So, Pratityasamutpada is also known as the doctrine of dependent origination, that everything is conditional, relative, and impermanent. The doctrine of dependent origination is the foundation of the all teachings of Buddha. It is implicitly contained in the Noble Truths. As we have read earlier, it is implicitly contained in the second Noble Truth that there is a cause for suffering. It explains how the miseries associated with phenomenal existence arise and how these miseries cease to exist. Pratitya Samutpad also gives a clear idea of the relative and dependent existence of all entities in the phenomenon world. So it gives us a clear idea that everything you see in this empirical world is dependent on something and all of them are relative to each other. All of the reality is relative and dependent upon each other in this phenomenal world. Thus, it is the causal law, both of the universe and the lives of individuals. So we could say that Pratityasamutpad is attributed as a causal law in Buddhism philosophy, which applies both to the universe as well as to the lives of individuals. So all the phenomenon in this very world, in this empirical world, is interconnected. They are related to each other and they are as well dependent on each other. Thereby, this is the law of causation or the theory of dependent origination in Buddhism. When analyzed from the perspective of human life and sufferings associated with it, Pratitya Samutpad takes the form of Dharma Chakra, which examines the causal relation between suffering and its causes. So in Buddhism, we are basically focusing upon how to we eradicate our suffering, and in that pursuit, we come upon that uh, since there is suffering, there might have been a cause for it, and thereby we refer to the theory of dependent origination, which is Pratitya. And if we consider Pratitya from the point of view of human sufferings, we arise into the conclusion that uh, there might be some relation with the suffering, there might be some causes of our sufferings. And Pratitya takes the form of Dharma Chakra, which examines the causal relation between sufferings and its causes for the human lives. The study of antecedent causes include the past, present, and future life as well. It identifies ignorance as a root cause of human suffering. So, ignorance is termed as the root cause of all the evils of suffering. This is also propounded by the theory of Jainism, by the philosophy of Jainism, whereby they say that it is because of ignorance of the uh, souls that we terms everything as what we see as something truth, and we just neglect our own incapabilities and fall into this uh, world of illusion. One can be free from ignorance and associated sufferings through practicing the Eightfold Path, which would eventually lead to liberation. So, deviating from the Upanishad uh, traditions, Buddha advised his followers never to chase the transcendental permanent self. This is a very important statement because coming from an ancient philosophy, this statement is of utmost importance to us because at that time Upanishads were paramount and they were all chasing immorality and uh, different entities, different transcendental entities of this world or the other world which existed. So, Buddha, on the contrary, advised his followers never to chase the transcendental permanent self, which was speculated as a substratum of eternal bliss. So, at that time, it was speculated that the transcendental self is something which is beyond our empirical self and it is all perfect. It is a substratum of eternal bliss. He thought that the states of consciousness are momentary in nature. He used to give the analogy of flame to demonstrate the momentariness of the so called self. So, for him, the self was just existing for a moment. It was the momentariness of the self which was preached by Buddha while he gave the analogy of flame. Buddha never wanted human beings to find their happiness in the impermanent, anitya material things as well. So, simultaneously, these the impermanent nature of all the things in the world. Buddha never wanted human beings to find their happiness in the impermanent material things as well. So, he never wanted people to chase upon all the vibrant cars or the luxuries which the world has to offer, all the materialistic things which are there in this world. He never wanted his followers to chase them or the other human beings to chase them. He made use of the concept of dependent origination to substantiate the impermanent nature of things. So everything is impermanent. Whatever you see is going to change at some point of time, and there's nothing which is permanent in this world. Buddha tried to recreate it with his philosophy of uh, Pratityasamutpada. Thus, Buddha, as an ethical teacher, wanted human beings neither to involve in speculative metaphysics nor find happiness in impermanent material things. So this very thought of Pratityasamutpada provides the base of Buddha's ethical teachings as well as the theory of dependent origination gives us the base to the Four Noble Truths propagated by Buddhism. So on this note, we have come to an end to this video. I'll see you guys in the next one where we try to discuss deeper upon the other philosophical implications of the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. Till then, see ya. Bye.